everyone. This is going to be a video on how to make a mask for a service project. So you're going to need some 9x6 rectangles of fabric. Right away I'm just ironing them out so that they're super flat so that they'll be easier to sew. And this is just me showing you my two pieces. And you'll also need some elastic as well. So I would recommend putting them together right away, making sure that they fit well together. Mine were a little bit off and I needed to match them up a little bit better. So I took a rotary cutter, which you'll see in just a second here, and lined them up. My mat that I'm cutting on is a cutting mat. Make sure you have something to cut on that you won't destroy if you're using a rotary cutter. Otherwise, you can use a scissors as well. So I'll just take it and cut off that little bit of extra so that they're matched up so that they're easier to sew. And that's what you'll have. And you'll just have those two pieces right there. Once you have your two pieces, this is just me showing you, you'll want to put them right sides together right away, and then you'll need to take your 7-inch elastics over to the sewing machine with you, which you'll see in just a minute. Once you get to your sewing machine, you will want to start in the middle of one section of the mask, which you'll also see in just a minute. This is going to be made by flipping it inside out, which you'll see when I get to that point. So make sure when you sew these, you don't sew all the way around so that there's a spot for you to flip them inside out. Or right side out, I guess. But you'll see I'm just going to sew down almost to the corner and then stop and put my elastic in. So you're just going to line up your elastic so that it's lined up with that corner, so there's a little bit sticking out, or it lines up really well. That's just me showing you that. Once you get to your corner, you're going to want to put your needle in and turn your sewing machine and sew down that side most of the way. Then you'll flip up the other corner. Make sure your elastic is flat and it's not twisted when you do this. And you'll sew it just like you did that side. There you go. And then you'll want to flip it again, sew most of the way down that side. And then you'll take your new elastic and put it in the corner just like you did the other two corners. And you'll sew over that again. So it's just a lot of repetitive sewing. Then you'll flip it. Again, make sure your elastic is flat. Make sure you're not running over any of your elastic. I usually try to stick it further into the mask when I do this. Line that up with your corner once again, which you'll see. Kind of just making sure that your fabric's all lined up too while you're sewing. And then once you get to the corner, you'll stop and flip again. Again, this is where it's really important that you don't close it all the way. I usually put my hand on where I started so that I leave a little pocket, and I'll show you that in just a second as well. So when you're done, you can just take it off your machine, cut the threads off, and you'll see the pocket that I was talking about. So you can turn it right side out. And that's also why it's really important to put your fabric right sides together so that when you flip it out, you have the right sides out. So this is just me showing you how to flip it. So there you go. You have the beginning of your mask. You're going to want to take this now over back to your ironing board, and you're going to want to take a scissors or a pencil or something sharp enough that you can kind of poke out the corners a little bit so that they are more corner shaped. This is optional, but I always like to do it so it kind of matches up a little bit better. And then you'll take it and just iron it flat so it's easy to do your pleats for the rest of it. Make sure at this point you don't iron over your elastic. Sometimes that elastic will melt. I just have my iron on like a cotton setting, a higher setting. You can also spray your mask with water to kind of help it iron better, and I usually iron both sides at this point as well. So now you will take this over and you're going to want to mark out where you're going to do your pleats. Make sure you don't flip your mask around at any point while you're doing this. Usually I mark them at a little over 1 inch. This is me trying to show you how to do it, but it's really hard with this camera. a little over 1 inch at 2.5 inches, and then at 4 or 4.5 inches. And you'll see that. And then I just move it down. Don't flip it or your marks will be off and your pleats will be kind of crooked when you go to sew that. Once you get to your sewing machine, this part is a little bit tricky and it takes a couple times of trying it. But this is the easiest way that I've found to do these pleats. You can use pins and mark them out yourself, but it is a lot harder. Once you get here, you take a ripper and you flip them. This is a really good way to get even pleats. As you can see, I'm just rolling it. And then you just kind of stick it out. Don't run over your ripper or you will probably break your needle. I usually just use my hand to keep it in place. Then I go to the next pleat and do the same thing. Just all the way down. Sorry, my hand's in the way there. Just make sure, again, you don't run over that ripper. Since it is metal, it will probably break or bend your needle and it'll cause problems in your sewing machine. And these are kind of tricky to get started, but again, they just take a lot of practice and they're way easier than trying to pin them. Once you get there, once you get to the corner, you're just going to want to flip it. Again, stick your needle in so it's easier to turn. Lift up your pressure foot, and then you're just going to go down that side pretty quickly. Mine's going relatively quick. I try to keep it in line with the edge of that mask and then stop short of that corner so you can flip it and get roughly about the same length apart. This time it's really important to flip your pleats so that they match the other side. You're going to be flipping up this time instead of like away from you instead of towards you, so that your pleats match up. Again, don't run over your ripper. And I usually use my other hand to kind of keep those pleats in line, make sure they lined up really well. So it's just a lot of making pleats and a lot of practice to get them to line up well. And this is just me doing it again. Just using my hands to kind of keep that in place. And pulling my ripper out. Then once you get to the other edge, you do the same thing. And this will just close in that hole that you left where you flipped it inside out. You'll see in just a minute I get to the corner of where my mask started and I'm going to flip it and I'm going to sew all the way around one more time just so that they stay together a little bit better, especially if you're donating these to hospitals or long-term care facilities, things like that. They all go through a sterilization process and you just want to make sure that they stay together really well. This is a great service project. A lot of places are looking for cloth masks right now, including the hospital, Grand Itasca here in town. So I'd really recommend, if you're going to do it, donate locally, donate to friends and family. We've made tons of these for friends and family. And then when you're done, just end it at the end and cut off all the extra threads. This part was really hard to see. It's really dark, but just cut off all the extra threads. That way they're not just hanging out when you go to iron again, as you'll see in just a minute. So yeah, there you have pretty much your finished mask besides the last ironing piece. So this part I'm just going to iron both sides, iron the pleats flat. This is kind of optional, you don't have to do this, but I just think it makes the masks look a lot nicer. As far as washing these masks, usually we wash them in hot water with like laundry detergent, and then hang them up to dry, and then I usually iron them after they're dry. But that's also obviously optional. I hope that made sense. This is just a video of me with my rabbit and my mask that I just made.